You watch the world scream for attention. Every thought, every breath, turned outward into pixels. But you say nothing. You post nothing. You watch instead. The silence grows around you, shaping you, protecting you, perhaps consuming you. You begin to wonder, in an age where existence demands visibility, what does it mean to remain unseen? Social media is a hall of mirrors, every post a reflection bent to please, impress, or provoke. Those who do not post are not without reflection. They are simply unwilling to distort it. They choose absence as a form of control, silence as rebellion against performance. Psychology calls this self-concept preservation, the instinct to protect one's authentic self from external interference. But withdrawal comes at a cost. The more you guard your identity from exposure, the less you recognize it in yourself. In avoiding the mirror, the edges of who you are begin to blur. You stop being seen, but slowly you stop seeing too. When no one reflects you back, how do you know you still exist? You were never meant to be watched this much. Every platform trains you to internalize an audience, to feel eyes even when no one is looking. Those who step away, who never post, carry the residue of that surveillance all the same. They develop what psychologists call hypervigilance of self, a low-grade anxiety that hums beneath the skin, whispering, "Be careful what they might think." Even silence becomes performative, a quiet stance that still signals something. You start living as if observed, though your life remains undocumented. The boundaries between your inner life and the imaginary gaze dissolve. When you are unseen, but still feel watched, who exactly is doing the watching? Not posting is not freedom. It's another form of obsession. In self-improvement psychology, this mirrors avoidant control behavior, the need to maintain stability by removing unpredictability. Every post risks misinterpretation, rejection, exposure. So you tighten the walls, convince yourself that silence equals strength. Yet in that restraint hides a hunger to be known safely, completely, without distortion. You craft a perfect narrative through absence, believing control can protect you from misunderstanding. But control is only fear disguised as discipline. The tighter you hold it, the smaller your world becomes, until even your thoughts feel monitored by your own caution. When you curate emptiness, is it peace you've built or a cage you've perfected? You are here, but you are not there. Others post their lives to anchor themselves in shared time, a digital record proving they existed that day, that hour, that second. You, in contrast, slip between moments unmarked. Psychology calls this temporal dissociation, a soft unraveling of continuity. Days blur, because nothing is declared, no narrative reinforced. Without the feedback loop of visibility, your sense of presence becomes internal, fragile, ghost-like. The world scrolls forward without you, and though you stand in it, part of you drifts unwitnessed, unarchived. The silence starts to feel like vanishing. If no one remembers your moments, did they ever truly happen? There is a strange power in being unseen. It lets you observe the rawness behind performance, the cracks, the desperation, the noise. You study people's projections like a behavioral experiment. Psychology calls this observer detachment, the distancing mechanism that protects you from emotional contagion. Yet the same mechanism that shields also starves. By never participating, you watch connection without tasting it. Your empathy dulls into analysis. You become fluent in reading others' needs, but illiterate in expressing your own. The longer you remain invisible, the safer it feels, and the harder it becomes to return. At what point does protection stop being safety and start becoming isolation? Beneath the silence often hides contempt, not for others, but for sameness. You see the repetition of trends, the mimicry of emotions, the endless cycle of borrowed thoughts. You refuse to join because you believe yourself different, perhaps deeper. Psychology names this narcissistic withdrawal, a quiet superiority masking fear of comparison. You don't post not because you have nothing to say, but because you fear saying something unremarkable. The refusal becomes identity. You define yourself not by creation, but by absence. Yet that absence becomes its own predictable pattern, a performance of non-performance. When your uniqueness depends on silence, what happens when no one is listening? Unshared thoughts don't disappear, they ferment. Suppressed self-expression often transforms into psychological tension, irritability, insomnia, sudden exhaustion. According to psychodynamic theory, when expression is denied, the shadow self seeks other outlets: sarcasm, perfectionism, quiet resentment. Every unposted sentence becomes a ghost in the mind, whispering what could have been said. The more you withhold, the more your inner world swells with unspent words, unacknowledged emotion. Silence begins to hum like static, not peace, but pressure. You think you've mastered restraint, but really, the voice within you has learned to speak through symptoms. When you refuse to speak, are you controlling your voice, or is it controlling you? Identity needs friction, something to press against, to define itself. Without external reflection, the self becomes porous, its edges soft. Cognitive psychology calls this identity diffusion, a loss of stable self-definition when feedback and affirmation are absent. You start doubting your preferences, your memories, even your tone of voice. You wonder how much of you exists only in private thought, and whether private thought alone is real. Each unshared version of yourself becomes another fragment, and together they form a personality no one has met, not even you. If you've never been witnessed, can you truly know who you are? You tell yourself you don't need validation, that your mind is a closed ecosystem, self-sustaining, pure. But psychology disagrees. Humans are social mirrors. Our identities stabilize through reflection, dialogue, resonance. The refusal to seek acknowledgement is rarely independence. It's often emotional self-neglect. By denying the need to be seen, you deny a core human nutrient: recognition. Your autonomy begins to rot into alienation. You call it strength, but it's starvation dressed as pride. The silence feels noble, but it's slowly teaching you to live without oxygen. When you stop needing others entirely, have you evolved or have you disappeared? Every thought you withhold leaves a shadow behind, a residue in your psyche. Research on rumination shows that unexpressed emotion loops endlessly, amplifying anxiety, self-doubt, and existential tension. The more you remain unseen, the more the unspoken accumulates, creating a quiet haunting inside your mind. You feel the pull to observe, to analyze, to remain invisible, but each choice thickens the fog around your own presence. You begin to recognize patterns in others' behavior more clearly than in your own, and yet you cannot escape the echo of what you refuse to project. Silence is no longer protective, it is corrosive, folding the edges of your reality into itself. If the self can haunt itself, who is left to exorcise the ghost? All this time, you believed silence was a shield. But the shield is gone. The absence has consumed the edges of your mind. Psychology calls this the paradox of isolation. The more you remove yourself from engagement, the more your identity erodes under the weight of its own invisibility. You exist now as a series of unobserved thoughts, a mind folding back into itself, self-referencing until recognition, external or internal, becomes impossible. Your reality fractures quietly, like glass under slow pressure. Even memory is unreliable here. Moments dissolve because no one marked them, no one acknowledged them, not even you. You were never meant to vanish entirely, yet here you are, swallowed by the inertia of being unseen. If being unseen means ceasing to exist, then have you ever truly been at all?